Well, first of all, I feel like to some degree, it's a little bit like coming home. I started my career here in the Santa Clarita Valley 35 years ago. So I see a lot of familiar faces, and boy, you guys look old. So anyway, I remember starting here 35 years ago when the Industrial Center was Craig Peters and I, and Scott Sheridan, I see him here, Doug Sonderegger, my partners, where there really wasn't much more business here than Lockheed Skunk Works. It was really a driven aerospace community in the Industrial Center. And to see what this region has transformed into over the last 35 years is just something that everyone in this room should really be proud of. Secondly, I chair the LA EDC, or I've chaired the LA EDC for years in the past, and this community has received several awards, which I think distinguish it from the other 88 cities that make up the county. Cities like, the awards like the most business-friendly, best city to live in, safest city, and the city of the future. And that really brings me to what I think is one of the most important messages that I can deliver today. And that is the combination of our business community, our elected officials, the residents that make up this community, and the fuel, which is the educational components of our community, are absolutely vital. Because the Santa Clarita community, more than any other community that I see in all of the hundreds of communities that I work with, has the opportunity to shape itself. There's been great progress and great momentum since I've seen it, but I will tell you, looking forward, there's an opportunity here really, truly to shape who you want to be. I was moved by the sectors that you've identified, Holly, and the fact that you're going after certain industry clusters. Because no different from what we are doing at CB, working with companies, Emil Haddad and his team is focusing on the residents and the people, the talent that's going to be fueling these businesses. And Ravi, the next speaker, and Dr. Van Hook, focusing on the educational components that are going to develop that talent. Because the one word that I want to mention today, and I'll mention it probably 15 more times before I leave this podium, it's talent. Talent, talent, talent. And there's going to be several examples where I demonstrate that the most effective thing that we can be doing with all those constituencies of our business community, our elected officials, the development community, and those that make up the residents here is partnership. We have got to be partnership. There's so many communities that I see where instead of collaboration, there's fighting inside. And there's an opportunity here to actually create the city of the future, capitalizing on the momentum that we've had in the past. So my presentation is really not about talking about the future, but it's really focusing on what I see as megatrends happening in the broader community in Southern California, in particular, that small area about 15 miles south of here in that Los Angeles basin, which does have an impact to the Santa Clarita area. I call it the year of the age. And I'm going to talk about trends here because there's things that are happening right now that I believe are they're making changes that'll clearly never return back to a normal. This is the new normal. So it's the year of the age. Hong Kong, which is really foreign investment. The importance of sports in our community. Hulu, or tech and creative talent. Hospitality and what's happening on the insides of the office buildings and also the developments in the residential and retail communities. How much tech is impacting the way we work and we live and we play. Hype, which is really omnichannel. It's about the way that we're retailing and how that's radically changing. And then ultimately, something that's not so positive, a massive issue that we're dealing with in LA, not so much here, but there's an opportunity for us to change the future, and that's the homelessness issue that's being created by some of the movements that's happening in commerce. So let me take these one at a time. For the last 4 years, the Southern California marketplace, particularly Los Angeles, has been the #1 target for foreign investment in the globe, by far, for several reasons. The first, price per pound, we're cheap. Believe it or not, we are cheap, based on the fact that you can go into a San Francisco and a New York, which houses the greatest amounts of talent. It is its most cost-effective area to grow your business in the Southern California marketplace. The other part of it is we're safe. It's one of the safest communities in the world. We have a rule of law here. So the investment community is driven to invest here. Any guesses on what they're investing in? What's that? Real estate, lots of businesses. 30% of that investment is going into the office sector. 30% of that investment is going into the residential sector. 15% in industrial, 15% roughly in retail. Who thinks they know who are the largest global investors? It should be obvious. Korea, China, Canada, by far. 50% of the global influx has been Canadian. By the way, that tracks and foots the same way across the United States. The Canadians are the #1 investors for global investment in the US, by far. Last year, LA and the Southern California marketplace was ranked as the #1 tech momentum city in the country. Tech momentum being the most desirable place for businesses to relocate. Now, we think of tech, we think of San Francisco, we think of Palo Alto, we think of the Stanford Business Park, and I'll get to that in a minute. The second area is the importance of sports. Sports is more than just entertainment. Sports is something that's vital to a community. And the Hollywood Park right now is a great example of that. Hollywood Park right now is doing to the Inglewood community what Staples did to the Los Angeles community. That's a 300-acre park that will have an interactive community with retail, with office, with high-density residential, and it'll be a walking community. Excuse me. It will be a walking community, but it really is an inflection point. The 300 acres is going to have a major impact on the entire Inglewood region. Right now, one of the biggest drivers that we have right now for concern is residential. We don't have enough housing. And I'm going to get to that in a minute because there are some unintended consequences of all of this growth that are impacting not just Santa Clarita, but the entire basin. But sports matter. We're the second largest sports city in the country. 13 major franchises, 13 professional sports teams. And I put USC and UCLA up there. And Holly, I really appreciate the blue and gold bag when I'm a Trojan. That was really, really thoughtful. And I'm not going to mention anything about our SC program right now on the sports side because we're not getting some great press. But UCLA, we're getting the headlines. UCLA is getting the same press. But this actually matters. This actually matters. We had 12.5 million people visit sports teams last year. Every one of these coliseums or stadiums that are being built are having an impact on those local communities. It's entertainment, it's brand, it's pride, it's a sense of community. And all of this matters. And it matters significantly. And that's why you see the incredible aggressiveness in terms of cities and counties going after sports franchises. It's amazing to me that 3 years ago, we didn't have a football team. And today we have 2 professional teams, both making it into the playoffs. The LA market is enormous. And when I say LA, virtually when I'm in Shanghai talking to my colleagues there, LA means anything south of Bakersfield. That's what it looks like. This is my favorite slide, and I think this is the biggest inflection point I see in our community by far, and it's really where I want to spend the most time. I put Hulu here because we represent Hulu right now. They're actively looking for 400,000 square feet. Los Angeles has always been known as the content capital of the world, and we've had their traditional content developers. We've had Warner Brothers, Sony, NBC, Universal. We've had Disney, certainly. And they've been active. DreamWorks, the last studio that opened was in 1994 with DreamWorks, which basically planted its entire headquarters in the middle of a Disney park. Why? Talent. They were going after Disney talent. It was all about that cluster. It was all about building a building and then attracting Disney employees. That's what they were trying to do. Look what's happening right now in our basin. Netflix, Spotify, Warner Brothers, Amazon, Apple, Google, Snap, Google, Hulu. Most of these, first of all, in the Silicon Valley, my colleagues, I've always been envious up there because my colleagues in the Silicon Valley will deal with companies you've never heard of, and they will take down 300,000, 400,000, 500,000 square feet at a time. All of a sudden, we're starting to see that. The Southern California basin has been a very traditional basin relative to employers. Employers will move 80,000 square foot to one building into 85,000 square feet into the next building. It's really pretty dull. But all of a sudden it's changed 24 months ago. When you see Amazon and Apple and Google, they're not building chips here. They're going after creative content. 8 years ago, Netflix was in 10,000 square feet. We just did a deal on a building that is going to put them now at $1.5 million. We're doing deals with them all over the world. Guess what? None of these people have hired employees yet. We had the opportunity to work with I had signed an NDA, so I can't talk about it, but they used to sell books. They're up in Seattle. And they had an argument in New York recently, demonstrating the importance of a public-private partnership. The public-private partnership is critical. Our elected officials have got to be on board with our developers, have got to be on board with our employers, have got to be on board with our residents, because it's all about talent. And the people in this room have influence, which is more valuable than currency. So we need, when asked, to be able to step up and support these employers, because they're going to drive everything else. It was fascinating to me when we actually had that unnamed company. I had the opportunity to work with them through the LA EDC. What was fascinating to me was they didn't want to look at real estate. The meeting that we had was the most important meeting that we had was with the president of USC, the president of UCLA, and the president of Caltech. We have 134 universities that make up this marketplace. 1 million students in class at any given time. 1 million students. So for this unnamed company that needed 50,000 jobs, we could have done that with 25% of one graduating class in 1 year. That swallows up small towns and unnamed towns in the Midwest or in Texas. We wouldn't even notice it here. And by the way, the level of talent that we can attract here is world class. So not all of these are going to be filled with local students. They're going to be all of a sudden importing students from all over the United States. But make no mistake, there is going to be by the way, I have 5 counterparts across the world. Nobody's having this conversation. Nobody's talking about talent and content development like we are. And by the way, it's not just motion pictures. The hottest commodity right now is in the television network space. A big year for a Disney could be 9 movies. Netflix last year did 85. They've got 300 in the can they're working on. And by the way, some of those developers are developing gaming content. There's content that's being developed across the board, and we are in the middle of it. And the way we focus on talent and creative talent through CalArts and through COC, to me, is going to be vital to this community going forward. Now, what's happening on the inside of office buildings? Right now, it's all about talent. So what did we do 5 years ago in downtown Los Angeles? I gotta hurry. Holly, where are you? I'm getting the hook. 5 years ago in downtown Los Angeles, we created a new way to work with office. We have hospitality. So we actually have concierge services that serve our employees. Not because we want to make them efficient, because we want them to stay. We want to recruit the new ones. It's important to us to recruit and to retain the best talent in the industry. I get a report once a week that talks about specifically how much time and how much convenience we've saved our employees. Last week, it was 616 tasks, 289 hours, and it's things like planning kids' birthday parties, not getting somebody a cup of coffee. Wellness. In downtown LA, we actually created a well component where we have 50 physical features of that building which drive a healthier work environment. None of that shows up on our CFO's bottom line, but our employees know it, they appreciate it, and they feel like it's part of our value system that they're important, because I'm trying to attract and retain the best talent in the industry. This is the biggest change that's happening right now, and that's the omni-channel. The omni-channel is radically changing the way that we are going to, that's not going to work, is it? Is radically changing the way that we're retailing. Quick to raise of hands. How many people bought more on the internet this last holiday season prior to the one before? Now, allegedly, there's only a 12% increase in that, a 12% increase. But I can tell you, I've got 3 daughters. I'm going to replace my front door with a loading door, because I've got more going out and more coming in my front door. And if I had dock high loading, it would be a much more efficient situation for me. But it's radically changing. It's radically changing. 5 years ago, there were 25 buildings that were 1 million square feet or larger in Southern California. 5. Last year, there were 50. Let me describe. It's 50 acres, actually, to build a 1 million square foot building. A 1 million square foot building. It takes a tremendous amount of investment to make that happen. And why is that happening? It's all retail. It's because you want your product the next day, and today you really want it today. You really want it today. And this last mile opportunity is going to be critical. So what's happening right now is the industrial market is changing radically. When I was working with Craig and Doug in the audience, 16-foot clear, 24-foot clear was important. 24 was considered Class A. 24-foot clear today in e-commerce is a teardown. Companies need 38-foot clear. They need 40-foot clear. We're starting to see now double stories because they need same-day delivery, and they need to start putting these warehouses in urbans with ramps so we can do 2 and 3 stories on warehousing. That's coming. Trust me. We had a hassle on the Needham Ranch project, frankly, because we were trying to get higher clear height to get to 38. We finally were successful. But it's going to be critical that we not just do what others are doing, but we ask our customers and clients what they need, adapt to that in order to continue with that business-friendly moniker. The retail experience that you do have is going to be different. It's interesting. If you look at the Grove, a close friend of mine built the Grove, 25 acres. Today, on the property in the Palisades that he just built, you could take the same number of tenants that he had at the Grove, he put them on 5 acres. Instead of a 40,000-foot Barnes, there's a 3,500-foot Amazon. He knows what you're going to buy before you get there. The inventory has been drastically cut because he studied the demographic. Amazon's coming out with a new store line right now that will tell you what all of your neighbors are buying. And they'll stock that because they know you're going to buy that. And it'll be in 3,500 feet. These are going to be mini distribution hubs. And they're going to be filled with a park and a fountain and something that's fun. And it's going to be walkable from your community. But it's going to radically change because if right now, classic, kids bought me a tennis racket for my birthday. Of course, they got me 5. They said, Dad, pick one. We got 4 tennis rackets that are going back to some warehouse someplace. There's a whole body of work now called reverse logistics. It's radically changing the way we're retailing. One final, and I'll get off the stage, Ollie, and this one's very, very important because this is a situation that you can avoid. Right now, the biggest crisis that we have in the LA market is the homelessness situation. In LA County, there are 53,000 homeless. 35,000 of those are unsheltered. 10,000 of those sleeping in their car at night and going to work in the morning. Most of the biggest growing population are families. Most of it because they're being priced out of their homes. We need more housing. We need more meals. We need more people that are actually creating housing where people want to live, work, and play in the community. We need then temporary shelter. We need permanent supportive housing. We need affordable housing. We need high-end housing. We need low-end housing. We need housing, housing, housing. There's a 2% vacancy right now in housing in the LA Basin. We are putting people out on the street because they can't afford to live. The one hole in our boat in this community is housing, and we need a lot more of it. I was before the city council last week of Los Angeles with my hat in my hand, testifying to please do not protect the rights of the homeless in the Skid Row area. Because what I thought there is if we do that in one confined area, and we think we can confine homelessness to 4 city blocks of a homeless area, we're out of our mind. Last year in San Diego, 15 homeless people started a statewide epidemic of hepatitis that shot through the state of California, hospitalizing 550 and killing 20. We can't confine these to bad areas. We've got to come up with an integrated solution. And I challenge everybody in this room before it's an issue, before it's a problem. Let's address it now. So with that, I'll get on the horizon. The only thing I'll leave you with is this. This public-private partnership, the partnership of business, the partnership of our community, our residents, the partnership of our elected officials is critical to shaping our future. And this is one of the very few communities that I've seen in the entire basin that actually has choice. We have the choice here to be who we want to be. working with developers that can create environments where people want to live, want to work, want to recreate. So with that, I thank you.